She is standing on the corner, the same corner as 7 years ago. The traffic light changes, but she does not cross. She stands there looking at the ground as if she's looking for something she dropped. But you know that's not it. You know that look. It's the look of someone deciding whether to turn left or right, knowing that either path will lead to the same place, back to what she promised herself she would never do again. And then she looks up, and she sees you, across the street. And for a second, just a second, time freezes. It's not surprise on her face, it's recognition, as if she knew you would be there, as if somehow she had chosen that time, that route, that exact moment for this to happen. You think, what a strange coincidence. But there's something in the way she looks at you that says otherwise. That says this was no accident. That says you knew too. And that's where the breakdown begins. Because you spend your whole life calling these moments coincidence, chance, luck, bad luck. As if reality were a blind roulette wheel spinning aimlessly. As if that person who reappears in your life after years were just a statistical whim of the universe. As if that problem that always comes back in the same way, with different people, in different contexts, but with the same taste of defeat, were just bad luck. You protect yourself with that word, coincidence, because it exempts you. It takes you out of the equation. If it was chance, it wasn't your fault. If it was bad luck, you don't need to change anything. Coincidence is the perfect alibi for not looking inward. But what if I told you that nothing, absolutely nothing, that happens in your life is coincidence? That every person who crosses your path at the wrong time, every opportunity that slips through your fingers, every pattern that repeats itself disguised as a different event, is following an invisible logic? A logic that does not come from the universe, does not come from fate, does not come from any external force. It comes from you, from your unconscious, from that part of you that doesn't speak in words but in events, in synchronicities. Carl Jung spent decades studying this. He called it synchronicity. Events that have no cause and effect relationship but have a relationship of meaning. It's not magic, it's not cheap spirituality. It's deep psychology. Your unconscious not only interprets reality, it constructs it. Through micro choices you make without realizing it. Through paths you choose without knowing why. Through people you meet by chance, but who in fact you were looking for all along. You just didn't know it consciously. And perhaps most disturbing of all is realizing that what you call repeated bad luck is not bad luck. It's a pattern. A pattern that you yourself are creating because there is something inside you, a wound, a fear, an unfaced truth that needs to be seen, and the unconscious doesn't give up. It will continue to project onto your external reality what you refuse to look at internally until you wake up or until you destroy yourself trying to ignore it. So when you say, what a strange coincidence, what you're really saying is, I don't want to look at what this means, because if you look, you'll have to admit something about yourself. Something that has been there for years, screaming through events that you insist on calling chance. And maybe that's why this video came to you now, at this moment, when you were ready or desperate enough to hear it. The first thing you need to understand is why we believe so much in coincidences. It's not because we're rational, it's exactly the opposite. It's because we need a refuge. Modernity has taught us to dismiss as chance anything we can't fit into a neat scientific explanation, a clear cause and effect relationship. If there is no immediate logical explanation, it is coincidence. If it cannot be proven, it is superstition. And so, we have created a world where the events of our lives no longer have meaning, only probability. But the truth is that calling something a coincidence is not an act of rationality. It is an act of self-preservation. Because if it wasn't chance, then it was choice. And if it was choice, you are responsible. Even if it's an unconscious choice, even if you don't know you made it, it's still yours. And that's too heavy to carry. So you prefer to believe that you met that person by chance, that you missed that opportunity because of bad luck, that the same problem came back because of bad luck, because the alternative, accepting that you are creating all of this in some way, is unbearable. Think about that relationship that ended badly. You swore you would never get involved with someone like that again. And then, 6 months later, you meet someone completely different. Different appearance, different background, different personality. But 3 months into the relationship, you realize it's the same dynamic, the same feeling of giving more than you receive, the same anguish of not being seen, the same pattern of emotional abandonment, just with a different guise. And you think, what bad luck? Again, but it's not bad luck. You chose that person. Your unconscious chose them. Because there's something in that pattern that you haven't resolved yet. Something that needs to be repeated until you finally look at it and understand it. Freud called this the compulsion to repeat. We repeat our traumas, our wounds, our unresolved conflicts through our choices. Not because we like to suffer, but because the unconscious works like this. It tries to resolve what has been left open. And if you don't resolve it internally, it will continue to recreate it externally. It will put the same situations in front of you again and again, disguised as something new, until you wake up. And the irony is that the more you insist it was coincidence, the more the pattern repeats itself. Because you're not learning, you're just reacting. You're blaming luck, fate, the universe, anything but yourself. And the unconscious doesn't accept that. It won't stop showing you. It will only increase the intensity. That little bit of bad luck becomes a crisis. That chance encounter becomes a reunion impossible to ignore. That strange coincidence becomes a synchronicity so obvious that you can no longer pretend not to see it. Jung understood this better than anyone. He realized that there are events in life that cannot be explained by cause and effect, but that carry a deep meaning. Events that seem orchestrated, not by an external force, but by the psyche itself. You think of someone you haven't seen in years, and on the same day you receive a message from that person. You're going through an internal crisis, and out of nowhere, you find a book, a movie, a conversation that speaks exactly to what you are experiencing. You're about to make an important decision and, coincidentally, something happens that forces you to rethink everything. It's not magic, it's synchronicity. It's the unconscious projecting onto external reality what is happening in internal reality. And it does this through you, through your choices, your movements, your attention. You don't realize it, but you are constantly tuned into certain types of events, certain people, certain situations. And when external reality reflects back what is boiling inside, you call it chance. But it's not. It's your unconscious trying to wake you up. And here's something that few people realize. Chance is comfortable because it's neutral. It doesn't judge. It doesn't demand. It doesn't charge. If you met that person by chance, then you don't need to ask yourself why you still think about them. If you missed that opportunity by bad luck, you don't have to question whether you really wanted it or if you were sabotaging yourself. If the same problem came back coincidentally, you don't have to admit that you may be creating this problem through behaviors you don't even realize you have. Chance gives you a free pass. It puts you in the position of a spectator of your own life, as if things just happen to you, not through you. But synchronicity doesn't give you that luxury. It says you were involved in this, somehow you called it. Not consciously, not intentionally, but your unconscious was looking for it, and it found it. And that's a hard truth to swallow, because it means you're not just a victim of circumstances. You are an active participant, even when you don't know you're participating. So when you say it was coincidence to meet that person in that place, what's really happening is that you chose unconsciously to be there, at that time, on that path, because there was something unresolved between you, something your conscious mind wants to forget, but your unconscious mind refuses to let go of. And it will continue to create these chance encounters until you stop running away and finally face what needs to be faced. And that's where it gets scary. Because if you admit that nothing is coincidence, then you also have to admit that you are creating your reality. Not consciously, not magically, but through the invisible choices your unconscious makes for you. Choices you don't control, that you don't even notice, but that ultimately determine who you meet, what you experience, and what pattern you get stuck in. Jung said that there is no such thing as chance. There is only a lack of understanding about the forces that are at work. And these forces are not mystical. They are psychological. They are the deep layers of your mind trying to communicate with you through the only language that consciousness can sometimes hear, real-life events. The unconscious does not speak in words. It speaks in symbols, in situations, in synchronicities. And when you ignore these messages and label them as chance, you are basically hanging up the phone while the deepest part of you is desperately trying to call you. And the more you hang up, the more intense the calls become. Because the unconscious does not give up. It cannot give up. It is part of you. And it will keep trying to show you what you need to see until you finally answer. But synchronicity doesn't just work in reunions, in people who reappear, in moments that seem like destiny. It also works, and especially, in the patterns you hate to admit. The ones you swear are not your fault. The ones you attribute to chance, bad luck, the universe conspiring against you. And it is in these patterns that the unconscious screams loudest, because they are not accidents. They are messages. Messages you are sending yourself but refusing to read. You always have bad luck at work. You always choose the wrong boss, the toxic environment, the job that exhausts you, and you think it's the market, it's the people, it's the economy. But what if it's not? What if you are unconsciously choosing environments that confirm a deep belief you have about yourself, that you don't deserve recognition, that you need to suffer to be valuable, that work is punishment, not fulfillment? Your unconscious reads this belief and then invisibly leads you to places that confirm it. Because the unconscious doesn't want you to be happy. It wants you to be consistent. And if your internal identity says, I don't deserve it, it will ensure that your external reality repeats this truth until you finally look at it and decide to change it. Or maybe you always have bad luck in relationships, always the wrong person, always the same ending. And you swear there's no pattern. After all, each person was different, each context was new. But was it? Or were you repeating the same emotional choice in different guises? Unconsciously choosing emotionally unavailable people because that's what you learned to love in childhood. Choosing dynamics of abandonment because that's where you feel at home. Not because you want to suffer, but because the unconscious doesn't deal well with novelty. It prefers the familiar, even if the familiar hurts. Jung said that everything we don't bring to consciousness returns as destiny, and that's exactly what happens. What you deny, what you repress, what you refuse to see within yourself, all of it comes back. But it doesn't come back as a thought. It comes back as an event, as a coincidence. Like that problem that reappears in a different guise. Like that person who reminds you of someone you tried to forget. Like that moment when everything falls apart just when you thought you had everything under control. An external reality becomes a faithful but distorted mirror of what is happening inside. Are you afraid of losing control? You will get unlucky and lose control of something important. Are you running away from a truth about yourself? You will accidentally encounter a situation that forces you to face that truth. Are you trying to forget someone? That person will reappear, not because the universe wants to test you, but because your unconscious mind has not yet finished processing it. And until it's finished, it will continue to project, until you stop calling it bad luck and start calling it a pattern. But here's the most disturbing point. You don't want to see the pattern, because seeing the pattern means taking responsibility. It means stopping blaming chance, fate, others. It means looking at your life and realizing that every repetition, every bad luck, every coincidence is telling you something about who you are, what you believe, what you haven't resolved yet. And that hurts, because it means you're not a victim of circumstances. You're a co-author, unconscious but a co-author nonetheless. And maybe that's why we call everything a coincidence. Because the word pattern requires action. It requires change. It requires you to stop waiting for life to get better on its own and start looking at the invisible choices you make every day. The micro choices that take you, without you realizing it, back to the same place, to the same pain, to the same ending. Think about that person you always attract, not physically, but emotionally. You meet someone new and at first they seem different. They seem promising. But a few months later, you realize it's the same emotional dynamic, the same feeling of chasing affection, the same frustration of not being a priority. And you think, how did I end up here again? But the real question should be, why did I choose this again? Because you chose it. Your unconscious chose it. On the first date, at the first signs, in the first conversations. It already knew. It recognized the pattern. And it took you there. Because there is something in that pattern that needs to be seen. Something about how you relate to love, to abandonment, to self-worth. And as long as you don't see it, the pattern repeats itself. Freud explained this through the compulsion to repeat. The unconscious need to relive traumatic or unresolved situations until they are finally processed and integrated. We don't repeat out of masochism. We repeat in an attempt to master. The unconscious is trying to resolve something. It's trying to give you another chance to see, to understand, to do differently. But if you continue to deny that there is a pattern, if you continue to call it bad luck or coincidence, it never resolves itself. It just repeats itself with increasing intensity. And this is where synchronicity becomes almost cruel. Because the more you deny it, the more obvious the pattern needs to become. That little sign you ignored turns into a crisis. That subtle dynamic turns into a collapse. That coincidence turns into a synchronicity so explicit that you can no longer pretend you don't see it. The unconscious is not being cruel. It is being desperate. It is screaming. And you continue to cover your ears. So no, it wasn't bad luck again. It was you, your unconscious, trying to show you something. And the more you ignore it, the louder it has to scream. And it screams through reality, through events that seem random, but follow a deep logic. The logic of your unhealed wounds, your limiting beliefs, your unnamed fears. And as long as you keep calling it chance, you'll remain stuck, repeating, without understanding why. And perhaps the scariest part is realizing that the pattern is not only in the big events, in relationships that implode, in jobs that exhaust you. It's in the small details, in the way you're always late when it's important to be on time. In the way you always forget to call that person you should call. In the way you always lose important objects at moments of decision. These are not accidents. They are slips. They are the unconscious manifesting itself through everyday coincidences. showing you where you are sabotaging yourself, where you are running away, where you are lying to yourself about what you really want. And when you start to see this, when you stop calling everything chance and start looking for patterns, your whole life changes meaning, because nothing is random anymore. Everything is telling you something. Every person who crosses your path, every opportunity that slips away, every problem that returns, everything has a message. And the message is always the same. Look inside. There's something here you need to see. But there is a type of synchronicity that is even more difficult to face. It's not the patterns that repeat themselves. It's the people who come back. The ones you swore you had overcome. The ones you left in the past, locked the door, threw away the key. And then years later they reappear. Not as a memory, as a presence, in front of you, at the most unlikely moment. And you call it coincidence. But it's not. It's the return of what you buried alive. Jung called it the shadow. Everything you deny in yourself, everything you repress, everything you refuse to integrate, it doesn't disappear. It stays there in the darkness, waiting. And the unconscious doesn't accept that you simply ignore parts of yourself. It will bring them back, through events, through people, through synchronicities that force you to look at what you tried to erase. That person who hurt you and whom you swore you would forget, when they reappear by chance, it's not the universe being cruel. It's your unconscious saying, you haven't processed this yet. There's still something here you need to understand about yourself. Maybe it's not about them. Maybe it never was. Maybe it's about what they represented, about the wound they touched, about the part of you that hasn't healed yet. And the most disturbing thing is that you knew. You always knew they would come back, not consciously, but there was something in you that never really closed that door. Something that remains stuck in that moment, in that pain, in that dynamic. And the unconscious leaves nothing unfinished. It will continue to create opportunities for you to revisit, reprocess, and finally integrate. And these opportunities come disguised as coincidences. Are you about to truly move on? She will show up. Have you finally managed to build a life without thinking about her? She will send you a message. Are you at an important crossroads? About to make a decision that will definitively break you free from that pattern? She will cross your path, and you will think, why now? But the real question is, why haven't I freed myself from this yet? Because synchronicity doesn't bring back what's resolved. It brings back what's repressed, what's denied. What you swept under the rug thinking it would disappear on its own. And the more you deny it, the more dramatic the return needs to be. Because the unconscious isn't interested in making you comfortable. It's interested in making you whole. And you can't be whole by ignoring parts of yourself. Jung said that what you don't face inside, you will find outside, as destiny. And that doesn't mean you're attracting bad people. It means you're attracting opportunities for healing. Only these opportunities don't come wrapped in gift paper. They come disguised as painful reunions, as inevitable confrontations, synchronicities that seem like nightmares. But they are in fact invitations. Invitations for you to finally look at what you tried to forget and understand what it really means about you. And here's the truth that no one wants to hear. If that person came back, it's not because you have a destiny together. It's because you have a destiny with the wound they represent. And until you face that wound, it will keep coming back. With different faces perhaps, with different names, but the same energy, the same pattern. Until you finally stop running away and look at the mirror that life is showing you. And perhaps the scariest thing is to realize that you are not being persecuted. You are being called. Called back to something you left unfinished. Called back to a part of yourself that you abandoned. And the unconscious will continue to create these chance encounters, these disturbing coincidences, until you answer the call. Or until you destroy yourself trying to ignore it. But there is something even deeper happening in these returns. Because when that person reappears, it's not just about them. It's about all the versions of yourself that existed in that relationship. The version that believed in it. The version that allowed itself to be vulnerable in that way. The version that hadn't yet learned to protect itself. And when you see them again, it's not just them who comes back, it's you. That you tried to kill, bury, forget. And they're there looking back, asking to be recognized. And maybe that's why these reunions hurt so much. Because it's not just the person's pain. It's the pain of seeing who you were. Of realizing how much you've changed. Or how much you haven't changed. Of recognizing that no matter how hard you tried to erase that chapter, it's still written in you. In your defenses. In your fears. In the way you love or stopped loving. And your unconscious knows this. It knows that you can't grow by ignoring parts of yourself. That you can't become whole by rejecting the parts that hurt. So it brings them back, through synchronicities, through encounters that seem impossible but happen exactly when you need, even if you don't want, to look back and finally make peace with who you were, Think about that moment. You're living your life, building your new reality, and suddenly there it is. And for a second, it all comes back. The anxiety in your chest, the lump in your throat, that feeling you swore you had overcome. And you realize you haven't overcome anything. You just pushed it down. You just pretended it didn't exist. And now it's there in front of you, proving to you that nothing that is repressed ever really disappears. And the question you don't want to ask is, how many more times will this happen? How many more times will you come across this person, this energy, this pattern, until you finally stop calling it chance and start calling it a message? Because that's what it is. A message from your unconscious to you, saying, look at this, really look at it. Stop pretending it doesn't exist. Stop pretending you've gotten over it. Because until you look, I'll keep putting it in front of you. And the most disturbing thing is that the unconscious is in no hurry. It can wait years, decades if necessary, because it knows that eventually you'll have to face it. Eventually, the weight of what is repressed will become too great to ignore. And when that happens, when you finally look, you'll realize that the person was never the problem. The problem was you, the part of you that didn't want to see, the part of you that preferred to call it coincidence because the truth was too heavy. And when you understand that, when you stop seeing these returns as punishment and start seeing them as opportunity, everything changes. Because you stop running away. You stop being afraid. You stop pretending you've overcome something that was never truly resolved. And you finally allow yourself to feel what you need to feel, see what you need to see, integrate what needs to be integrated. And only then, only after that, can the person truly leave. Because what needed to come back wasn't them. It was you, the part of you that got stuck in that moment. The part you abandoned when you decided to move on without looking back. And now it's here, asking to be seen, asking to be integrated, asking to finally be free. And here we come to the most uncomfortable point of all. Because until now we've talked about patterns, about repetitions, about people who come back. But there's something even deeper going on. Something that will make you question everything you think you control in your life. Because synchronicity isn't just about what you attract. It's about what you avoid. And the unconscious has a particularly brutal way of preventing you from running away from yourself. Are you about to make an important change? Something will go wrong. Have you finally gotten an opportunity that would take you away from your patterns? You will lose that opportunity in an inexplicable way. Are you one step away from freeing yourself from a toxic dynamic? You will get sick. You will have an accident. Something will happen that will keep you exactly where you were trying to get out of, and you call it bad luck, bad fortune. It wasn't meant to be. But what if it's none of that? What if it's unconscious self-sabotage? What if your unconscious, for some deep and disturbing reason, doesn't want you to change? Because change means facing something. It means leaving your comfort zone, even if that zone is painful. It means abandoning an identity, however destructive it may be. And the unconscious prefers consistency to growth. Freud noticed this in his patients. He saw people who were finally getting better, finally breaking out of destructive patterns. And then, on the eve of real change, something would happen. A crisis, a relapse, an accident that threw them back to square one. Not because of divine punishment, not because of bad luck, but because there was something inside them that was afraid of change. Something that identified so strongly with the pain that healing seemed like a threat. And here's the terrifying part. The unconscious can use external reality to keep you trapped, not in a magical way, but through your choices. Are you about to move to another city and start over? You will forget to do something important that makes the move unfeasible. Are you about to end a toxic relationship? You will accidentally do something that binds you even more. Are you about to seek professional help? You will conveniently run out of time or run out of money. These are negative synchronicities, events that seem external but are orchestrated unconsciously by yourself, because there is a part of you that is not ready yet, that still believes you deserve that pain, that still identifies with that pattern. And as long as that part is not seen, not understood, not integrated, it will continue to sabotage any real attempt at change. And perhaps the most brutal example of this is when you finally decide to seek therapy, work on your issues, delve deeper into self-knowledge, and just at that moment, everything falls apart. You lose your job, a relative falls ill, a financial crisis arises, and you think it's not the right time, I'll leave it for later. But what if that later never comes? What if the unconscious is creating these crises precisely to prevent you from looking inward? Because looking inward means changing, and changing means killing the version of yourself that has become accustomed to suffering. And here I need to tell you something. If you are at this point, if you are noticing these patterns but continue to put off facing them, maybe it's time to stop waiting for the right moment. Because the right moment will never come. The unconscious will always create a reason to postpone, an excuse, a crisis, until you consciously decide that enough is enough, that you will no longer accept sabotage, that you will look inward even if it hurts, even if it's inconvenient, even if it seems impossible. And if you need help with that, and we all do at some point, don't wait for life to get better on its own before seeking therapy. Seek therapy so that life can get better, because the unconscious doesn't resolve itself. It needs to be brought to consciousness. And that doesn't happen on its own. It takes work, it takes courage, it takes professional help. So if you're seeing these patterns in your life, if you're recognizing these synchronicities that hold you back instead of setting you free, maybe it's time to stop calling it bad luck and start calling it what it really is: self-sabotage. And treating self-sabotage isn't a matter of willpower. It's a matter of awareness. It's about understanding what inside you still believes that you don't deserve to leave that place. And that honestly you can't do alone. But back to the point. These negative synchronicities are not the universe conspiring against you. They are you conspiring against yourself. And the only way to break this is by bringing to light what is operating in the shadows. Because as long as it remains unconscious, it will continue to control you. It will continue to create events that seem external, but are direct reflections of internal beliefs you don't even know you have. And the cruel irony is that the more you need to change, the stronger the sabotage. Because real change, the kind that takes you out of the pattern for good, threatens the very structure of your identity. And the unconscious protects identity above all else. Even if that identity is painful, even if that identity slowly destroys you. Because at least it's familiar, at least it's yours. And the fear of the unknown is always greater than the suffering of the known. So you get stuck in a cycle. You recognize the pattern, decide to change, and then something happens that pulls you back. And you swear it was bad luck, but it was fear. Fear disguised as an accident. Fear disguised as a crisis. Fear disguised as it's not the right time. And as long as you don't name the fear, as long as you don't look it in the face, it will continue to win. And you will remain trapped, calling what is actually the terror of breaking free bad luck. Think about how many times you've been on the verge of taking the plunge, about to leave that job that exhausts you, about to end that relationship that diminishes you, about to change cities, lives, identities. And then, always at the last moment, something happens. Something that seems so convenient, so perfectly timed to stop you that you even laugh at your bad luck. But it's not bad luck. It's your unconscious saying, no, not yet. You're not ready to be free yet. And perhaps the most painful part is realizing that you're not ready, not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because there's something in you that still believes you need that pain, that you deserve that suffering, that that's who you are. And as long as that belief is not seen, not questioned, not destroyed, you will continue to create the same crises, the same bad luck, the same synchronicities that keep you exactly where you've always been, suffering, but at least suffering in a familiar way. And now you begin to understand the real meaning of nothing is coincidence, because it's not just about seeing patterns or recognizing synchronicities. It's about realizing something much more disturbing. You don't control your life as much as you think you do. In fact, you barely control your conscious choices. And the unconscious choices, the ones you don't see, don't notice, don't admit, are the ones that really determine your reality. The ego, that part of you that thinks it's in charge, is just the tip of the iceberg. Everything you see, everything you recognize as you, is just the surface. Beneath it, there are layers and layers of unconscious content. Fears you haven't named, beliefs you haven't questioned, traumas you haven't processed. And all of it is there, operating, making choices for you, creating your reality. And you call it chance because you can't see the gears turning. Jung said that the ego and the unconscious are in constant conflict. The ego wants control, predictability, security. The unconscious wants truth, integration, wholeness. And when these two come into conflict, who wins? Always the unconscious. Because it is bigger, older, deeper, and it has a weapon that the ego doesn't have. It can use external reality as a battlefield. So when you consciously decide to move on, forget someone, change your life, but the unconscious hasn't processed that yet, guess who wins? You'll make the right decision, take all the right steps, and then something will happen that ruins everything. And you'll swear it was bad luck, but it was the unconscious saying, not yet, you're not ready yet. There's something here you need to see first. And that's the illusion of control that modernity has sold us. The idea that we are rational, conscious beings in control of our lives. That all we have to do is want to change. That all we have to do is decide for it to happen. But the truth is much more humiliating. You are driven by forces you don't understand. You make decisions based on content you can't see. And most of your life is determined not by what you consciously choose, but by what your unconscious chooses for you. And accepting that, really accepting it, is terrifying, because it means you are not the author of your life, at least not completely. You are at most a co-author, and the other author, the unconscious, is writing the script without consulting you, using random events as plot twists, using random people as characters that reflect parts of yourself that you don't want to see, using unexpected crises as turning points that force you to look at what you've been avoiding. And perhaps the greatest synchronicity of all is precisely this. The more you try to control, the more you lose control. The more you insist that you know what you are doing, the more the unconscious needs to prove to you that you don't. The more you deny that there is something operating in the shadows, the more dramatic the shadows need to become in order to be seen. Nietzsche had a phrase about this, about the weight of being the author of one's own life. He said that real freedom is not doing what you want, but wanting what you do. And that implies awareness. It implies looking at your choices and asking, did I really choose this? Or did something inside me choose for me? And when you start to really ask that question, the answer is always uncomfortable, because most of the time you didn't choose. You were chosen by patterns, by trauma, by beliefs, by unconscious content that you don't even know exists. And here's the ultimate truth about control. You can't control the unconscious, but you can bring it into consciousness. You can illuminate the shadows. You can see the patterns. You can understand the beliefs. And when you do that, something changes. It's not that you gain total control, that's an illusion. But you stop being blindly controlled. You stop being a puppet of forces you don't understand. And you begin to be, in fact, a conscious co-author of your life. And maybe that's why synchronicity exists. Not to control you, but to wake you up. To show you that there is something operating that you are not seeing. To force you to stop pretending that you are in charge and start investigating what is really driving your choices. Because only when you see, really see, can you change. And until then, you will continue to call it coincidence. And you will remain stuck. Think about it. How many times have you said, I want to change, but haven't? How many times have you made promises to yourself that you haven't kept? How many times have you planned a different life but ended up recreating the same one? And you call it weakness, a lack of discipline, bad luck. But it's none of that. It's the unconscious winning. Again, because you still haven't brought to light what is holding you back. You still haven't seen the belief, the fear, the trauma that is driving your invisible choices. And as long as you don't see it, you will continue to create the same reality. You will continue to attract the same people, the same problems, the same crises. And you will continue to call it coincidence. Because the alternative, admitting that you are unconsciously responsible for all of this, is too heavy to bear. But it is also the only way out. The only way to break the cycle, the only way to stop being a victim of your own invisible choices and start being a conscious author of your life. And maybe that's why you're here, watching this, now, not by coincidence, but because something in you, perhaps your own unconscious, knows that it's time to stop pretending, to stop running away, to finally look at what needs to be seen, even if it hurts, even if it destroys the illusion of control you've built. Because the truth, however painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. Always. But there comes a moment when all of this stops being theory. It stops being a concept, and it becomes a choice. You can continue to call it coincidence. You can continue to pretend you don't see the patterns, that you don't recognize the repetitions, that you don't understand what your unconscious is screaming through reality. Or you can do something different. You can start reading the signs, not as cheap mysticism, not as magical thinking, but as psychological language, as the language your unconscious uses to talk to you when your consciousness refuses to listen. And here's the fine line you need to understand. There's a huge difference between Jungian synchronicity and paranoia, between recognizing real patterns and seeing signs where they don't exist. And that difference lies in the question you ask. When something strange happens, when a coincidence surprises you, the question is not, what is the universe trying to tell me? The question is, what does this reveal about what is going on inside me? Because synchronicity is not the universe talking to you. It is you talking to yourself, through events, through unconscious choices that create opportunities for you to see what you are denying. So when you think of someone and receive a message from that person on the same day, it's not telepathy. It's that you were unconsciously tuned into that person, paying attention to subtle signs, maybe even sending signals yourself through behaviors you didn't even realize you had. And when you have bad luck with the same thing over and over again, it's not the universe conspiring against you. It's you recreating the same pattern through micro-choices that make sense to the unconscious but not to the conscious mind. And synchronicity shows you that. It forces you to look, to ask, why this again? What is it in me that keeps creating this? And here's the balance. You can't see everything as a sign. That's delusional. That's unlimited projection. But you also can't ignore the obvious patterns, the glaring repetitions, the coincidences that always happen in the same contexts, with the same energies, revealing the same wounds. Because these are not coincidences, they are messages. And you need to learn to read them without falling into the trap of attributing meaning where there is none. Jung knew this. He was skeptical by nature, a scientist, a psychiatrist, but he also recognized that there were events in life that carried a symbolic weight impossible to ignore. Events that seemed orchestrated not by chance but by meaning. And he called this synchronicity, not as a mystical explanation, but as a psychological phenomenon that deserved to be studied. And the way to distinguish real synchronicity from confirmation bias is simple. Ask yourself if it reveals a pattern in your behavior. If it shows you something about how you act, how you choose, how you sabotage yourself, or how you avoid things. If the answer is yes, it's synchronicity. If the answer is no, but the universe is sending me a message about someone else, it's probably projection. Because synchronicity always talks about you, never about others. It doesn't tell you that person is the right one or you should do this. It shows you. Look at how you're reacting. Look at what you're choosing. Look at the fear that's controlling you. Look at the belief that is holding you back. And when you start reading events this way, everything changes. Because you stop looking for external signs and start seeing internal patterns. So the next time something strange happens, don't ask, what does this mean? Ask, what does this reveal about me? And the answer will be there. Not in the coincidence itself, but in what you were thinking, feeling, avoiding, or looking for when it happened. Because you don't attract events, you create conditions. Emotional, psychological, behavioral conditions. And reality responds to those conditions. Not in a magical way, but in an absolutely psychological way. And perhaps the first practical step is this. Start writing things down. Write down the repeated bad luck. Write down the strange coincidences. Write down when people from the past reappear. And then look at the context. What were you experiencing internally when that happened? What choice were you about to make? What truth were you avoiding? And you'll start to see the patterns. Not because you're inventing meaning, but because the patterns were always there. You were just calling it chance because it was easier. And when you see the patterns, when you really see them, you stop being a victim. Because a victim is someone who thinks things happen to them. But when you realize that things happen through you, through your unconscious choices, you regain power. Not the power to control everything, but the power to see what you are creating and to choose to create differently. And now we come to the end, to the point where you need to decide what you're going to do with all this. Because you can close this video and go back to calling it all coincidence. You can go back to believing that you are a victim of chance, that life happens to you, that you have nothing to do with the patterns that repeat themselves. Or you can wake up. You can assume that nothing, absolutely nothing, that happens in your life is random. That every person who crosses your path, every misfortune that befalls you, every synchronicity that surprises you is telling you something about who you are, about what you haven't yet resolved, about what you need to see. And waking up hurts. Because waking up means stopping blaming the universe, fate, others. It means looking at your life and acknowledging, I created this, not consciously, not intentionally, but through my invisible choices, my unquestioned beliefs, my unnamed fears. I created this. And that awareness is liberating and terrifying at the same time. Because if you created it, it means you can create something different. But it also means you no longer have an excuse. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are. But to become who you are, you must first stop being who you are not. And who are you not? A victim. You are not a victim of coincidence. You are not a victim of bad luck. You are not a victim of patterns. You are a co-author. And the hardest part to accept is that you always have been. You just didn't know it. Because you were unconscious. Because you were calling chance what was in fact invisible authorship. And when you integrate that, when you really integrate it, something changes in the way you live. You stop waiting for life to get better on its own. You stop waiting for people to change. You stop waiting for the right moment because you understand that the right moment doesn't come. You create it through awareness, through deliberate choices that go against unconscious patterns, through the courage to see what is in the shadows and bring it to light. And perhaps the greatest synchronicity of your life is precisely this. You are here, now, reading this, at this specific moment in your journey. And you can call it coincidence. You can close the tab and move on. Or you can recognize that your unconscious brought you here because you are ready. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to look. Ready to take responsibility. Not for the pain they caused you, but for the way you have perpetuated that pain through your choices. So what to do now? Start small. Start observing. Observe the patterns. Observe the repetitions. Observe when you say what bad luck, and ask yourself, was it really bad luck? Or did I do something unconsciously that created this? And don't blame yourself. Blame doesn't solve anything, but awareness does. Because when you see the pattern, you can change it. When you see the belief, you can question it. When you see the fear, you can face it. And if you realize you can't do it alone, and this is more common than you think, seek help. Therapy is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is the way to bring to consciousness what is operating in the shadows. It's a way to stop repeating and start transforming. Because the unconscious doesn't resolve itself. It needs to be illuminated. And that requires work. It requires courage. It requires someone to help you see what you can't see on your own. And perhaps in the end, the most liberating truth of all is this: you are not alone in this. Everyone is being moved by unconscious forces. Everyone is creating synchronicities without realizing it. Everyone is stuck in patterns they call bad luck. The difference is that now you know, and knowing changes everything, because you can no longer pretend. You can no longer hide behind the word coincidence. You saw it, and what has been seen cannot be unseen. So yes, nothing is coincidence. Everything, absolutely everything, is talking about you, about what you believe, about what you fear, about what you haven't resolved yet. And life will continue to show you, through events that seem random but follow the logic of your unhealed wounds, until you finally look, until you finally integrate, until you finally become whole. And when that happens, when you stop fighting your unconscious and start dialoguing with it, the synchronicities will not disappear, but they will change. They will cease to be crises and become invitations. They will cease to be prisons and become portals, because you will no longer be running away from them. You will be reading, learning, growing. And perhaps that is the greatest freedom possible. Not living in a reality without coincidences, but living in a reality where you finally understand what they have always been trying to tell you, that you are not at the mercy of chance, that you are much more powerful and much more responsible than you ever imagined, and that your whole life from the beginning was conspiring not against you but in favor of your consciousness, forcing you to wake up, calling you back home, back to yourself. So I ask you, are you going to keep sleeping, or are you going to wake up? The choice has always been yours, from the beginning. Only now you know it. And perhaps that was the most important coincidence of all. And now I want to know from you, what was the coincidence in your life that you are finally ready to call a pattern? What recurring event have you called bad luck, but deep down you always knew was telling you something about yourself? Write it down below, because naming it is the first step to freeing yourself. Watch the next videos on the channel, count on me, and follow the white rabbit.